I should bring this over here so she can see.
Yeah.
So are you leading us through this, Carolyn?
I could. I wasn't prepared to do that, but I think in essence, this is like a workshop, right? So it's just an opportunity to take a deeper dive on projects and the TIP and the CIP. We made some revisions to the single sheet, which is the big fat packet. I think there's probably 60 sheets there. They're roughly in order of construct, the earliest to be constructed to the latest to be constructed. So, we kind of went through last time what each of the sections mean and kind of where they came from. The big packets you have in front of you, like the 11 by 17s, are more of like an overview because it's obviously difficult to thumb through all the 60 sheets of projects. So these are roughly in order of construction as well, but when we pulled the report, we didn't use some of them might be a little bit later, a little bit earlier. So I think that what you probably want to think about are the ones that are gonna have staff time and funding going towards them in the next couple of years. Basically, we put all of the projects on this list that we know about. So if water system plan says put it, this could be a project, it's on there. If sewer plan says it needs to be a project, it's on there. If it's been identified as like a community, a certain neighborhood is excited about a project, it goes on there. So it really is a pretty broad cross section of varying developmental stages. So that being said,
and I kind of want to go back to part of, the whole reason why we're also doing this, and the reason why we put all of the projects on here is we don't want to get caught in the same place that we were with the wastewater treatment plant. So we want to know what's out there, what do we need to plan for, what's on our plate, so that we can better plan and prepare and not get caught on our heels.
so I think, kind of base feedback is, are there any projects in the next couple years that are real red flags for you and you'd rather not, you'd rather deprioritize them, or even vice versa? Are there any projects that you think should be a higher priority and we should be seeking out funding sooner? So kind of big ones for 2025, really. So projects to be constructed in 2025 are near the top. So if you look on the CIP report, the third one down, Cascade Avenue Sewer Phase 1 is 2025. Cascade Avenue East Water Line Replacement is 2025. Those are currently in design, so we can't really do much about them. They're happening. And Haywald Well Treatment Improvements, which is the sixth one down, is 2025. That one must happen. Or the Rock Creek Intake Rehab, which is towards the bottom. That one's kind of snuck in, so it has a bad number and it didn't get a date put on it. That's also a 2025 project. So we're working actively on those. So there's a couple 2025 projects on here that are more conceptual, so they might be good ones to kind of talk about. Specifically the couple Ash Alley projects. So that's towards the bottom of your CIP report page. We've got an Ash Alley resurfacing project, and we've also got an Ash Alley stormwater line relocation project.
I remember we talked about Ash Alley,
Mhm.
last time we went over these, about the fact that something needed to happen.
Think about, yeah, okay, so it's always kind of difficult because not everybody knows intimately where everything is, but, so stop me if anyone needs more clarification on any, when I'm talking about places or locations, stop me if you need more. And I can certainly slow down and bring up a map or, do whatever we need to do to add context. But, the Cascade Avenue Pump Station is, located on the west end of Cascade Avenue, so kind of by the Fort Building. When they started to excavate for that pump station project, they identified water coming out of the ground and it ended up being a stormwater outfall. That I'm not gonna say that we didn't know where it was, but we hadn't really been paying much attention to it. It completely full. We've been having a hard time even locating the end of the pipe. Coincidentally, this pipe has kind of a history. Ash Alley has an area drain that is just north of the new fourplex and the EMS building. That stormwater drain runs underneath the fourplex, and it collects water from First Street, Railroad Street, Seymour, some of Seymour, and then that outfalls underneath the railroad. So the main pipe goes underneath the railroad and outfalls by the pump station. When we realized, oh, the end of this is completely plugged, we can't even find it, we said, let's look upstream. And so we looked up at the next available, catch basin and got in as far as we could. The bottom of a 24-inch corrugated metal pipe is completely rusted out. Okay, is this what the pipe looks like underneath the railroad? Like the whole way? Like this deserves some attention. And the pump station guys can't start working on that pump station until we address the pipe that is currently running through the middle of the project. So we did have someone come out earlier this week and scope that line. And they found that the area drain at Ash Alley has two pipes coming into it. I suspect that they're for the downspouts for the fourplex. I believe those are going into that pipe. And then they couldn't get past them just because the way they were plumbed in. So they couldn't do a full inspection of that line. But ideally, we don't have storm lines running underneath buildings. So part of this project would be to run a new storm line. So connect the area drain to a catch basin on Seymour, run a storm line down to the nearest catch basin across First Street to get that out of there, and then resurface Ash Alley. It is known to have stormwater ponding issues. The surfacing is shot, half of it's gravel, half of it's old asphalt and patches, and we've had a lot of complaints and concerns from the businesses in that area. So that is one of the reasons that those projects are a little bit higher on the list of things to do.
Yeah. Sorry.
That's
So,
some of them.
Would you say you would be the part that on the storm line relocation, would that just be, what would you do under the railroad tracks? Have you figured out what you're gonna do then? Are you gonna
Oh, great.
line it like we talked about before, or would it be a new pipe? I'm trying to figure out where
Yeah,
it's 50 and.
yeah, I appreciate that. So when they did come out and they scoped it, they looked at it earlier this week, they found that it stopped being corrugated metal pipe about 14 feet in and it goes stuck to iron. So that's good because it means that the bottom of the pipe is not rutted out underneath the railroad. However, it is silted up about halfway into the railroad. So as part of the Cascade Pump Station project, the idea is to ask them to replace a section of pipe that we can access and then see if we can't jet out the rest of the outfall pipe, clean it out, do an inspection and line it if we need to. Right now, we can't even do a full inspection because we can't get the pipe clean. So. Well, we may not need to because it's stuck to iron and we're very happy to learn that the bottom of the pipe underneath the railroad is not.
Brought it out, yeah,
Yeah.
that's,
That's it. I'm a random one.
No, that was it. I just remember we talked about what we were gonna do with Ash Alley and whether we were gonna resurface it, like all, it is a mixture of gravel and patches and puddles and bumps and
Yeah.
whatnot.
So as we, I mean, and you know, money, it always kind of comes down to money. And
Yeah,
whenever we
that's
talk
what I was
about,
gonna-
whenever we talk about street projects, it's kind of like, where do we get the money for them? Because we don't have a revenue stream for them. So big, the last couple of years anyway, we've been able to secure, Transportation Improvement Board grant money. So the chip seal project up, in like the Montel Terrace alley or area was all TIB grant funded. They're funding a large portion of the First Street Overlook project. And they're funding chip seal up Ryan Allen and Foster Creek and First Falls, and Holly, this year. So my plan for that is every year to find my worst, you know, an area of my worst streets. They do something called a pavement, rating, pavement congestion rating, and so they give it a score. And based on that score, they decide whether or not it can be a chip seal project or it needs to be overlay, or whether it doesn't qualify for their preservation program, and we need to be considering like a full depth rehabilitation. So next year, I guess this year, the funding is open now, the grants are open now. I think it's August that I have to get them in, but I was gonna look at I was going to head and do the downtown project. So I was gonna try to get Seymour on there. I was gonna try to get Railroad on there. Ash Alley doesn't qualify. I don't know why they don't have Ash Alley on their list, but they don't of eligible streets. Cause it's an alley, I guess, right? Yeah. It's more of an access thing. So that was my plan for next year's Transportation Improvement Board grant. As well as next year also would be constructing the Lasher Street improvements. So I would also see if TIB is willing to fund that project. With any luck, they'll be able to do Lasher South Lasher, so Lasher from Jefferson to Vancouver, because that pavement is in desperate need of, you know, help as well. So kind of leaning away from projects that could have sewer extensions under them until we get our feet underneath us a little bit more with those projects. It doesn't make a ton of sense to invest in resurfacing if we're gonna dig it up and add sewer. Right. Some of the strategy there. Another neighborhood in need of pavement repair is like the Roselawn area, but we didn't want to have the Lasher project overlap with a bunch of chip seal in that area. Thought it would be a little bit clogged.
I was gonna say, Roseline can move up that list as far as you want. So,
Yeah.
I'm just throwing it out there.
No, Roselawn's like, yeah,
Where do you live?
it's one of them. That
No, I
whole,
know it's on there. It's on, I think
Yeah.
2027,
that area is,
27.
that whole area is kind of is tricky, so. We are looking at doing School Street. I start to think about the School Street project, so this would be transmission line, this would be Russell Avenue, this would be School Street water line. So kind of the area from Second Street up to Kanaka all the way. So fix the stuff underneath that needs to be fixed, take care of the street on top. That's a,
Repaint the pause.
Repaint the what?
I don't think paws are on that one. Yeah.
No.
Not cool.
Yeah, that's up to the school if they have any money left.
Yeah.
So the School Street, so the water line replacement, but then is there another school street as far as the paving, then that would be a separate category?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the grind and inlay, so it is
Yeah.
gonna be the third one down on the second page,
Okay.
is the School Street grind and inlay.
Okay, in the second page,
of the EIP.
oh, the TIP,
Am I
okay,
looking at the
so
TIP?
this
I
is
am.
the CIP is the School
Yeah.
Street water line improvement, and then you'd have the,
It should be on there too, though. All the TIP projects should also be on the CIP report. They're just broken out separately because we have to report the TIP projects.
Okay.
Top of page 3 is the grind and inline.
Oh, there it is, yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Followed by-
top of page 3 on the tip,
On the EIP.
on the CIP.
Mhm. It's, yeah,
The School Street water
Okay.
line is page
So,
2,
okay.
and page 3 has the overlay, yes.
So,
2027 could be a heavy year. We might need to. Or Frank Jones keep getting kicked, so. That might be a good, that could be a good conversation, really about like prioritization, so. Both the Frank Jones corridor and the School Street corridor, have been identified as needing, well, the School Street's more water based. Frank John's would be more sewer based, and then sidewalk on Frank John's, but Frank John's does have water replacements as well and a PRV ad.
PRV, what?
Pressure reducing
Okay.
valve,
Okay.
so. Currently, there's a valve that is turned off, which means that the water doesn't loop over there, so it's replaced in a pressure reducing valve. Now your water loops and it's a much more stable way to do it, also reduces the chances of having bacteria growth in dead end sections of your water system.
It's-
Yeah, because it's always moving.
So we're looking at maybe whether which one of those would take
Yeah,
the front seat.
whether,
If
yeah,
they can't both be done within that funding
it's hard.
window.
Yeah, it's
Mm.
harder. We have two I think of them as like maintenance kind of low effort. None of them are like really low effort though.
Mhm.
And then we have like kind of medium projects where they only touch like one division, and then you get into more like corridor projects where you're in sewer, you're in water, you're in streets, like you're kind of tackling all of it, so. The Frank John's projects, maybe they get split into two, where we do a north section and a south section.
Make it more manageable.
And that's where the pressure reducing valve work is up, like you were
It's
saying.
on the north section, yeah. So north of Loop Road as
Yeah.
being the north and south divider there. The south section is really in need of a sidewalk. The community there has expressed very vocally that they use that walking path, or they use a path and people drive too fast and they'd like some kind of separation. Could be a good opportunity to underground.
Always a good opportunity.
Always an opportunity to underground. None of the undergrounding numbers are in here, so that would be a separate set of I guess a separate division project ad.
Right, the undergrounding, we'd be working with the PUD on that, right? So it would be
Yeah.
a different kind of,
Well, it depends on the utility, right? If it's,
It'd be all power to go under.
Okay.
Oh, but you were saying.
oh, we underground and you're using
Right.
that term
Okay.
generically for,
Right.
for
Yeah.
power.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But there's.
I do know,
communications as
but
well.
you were absolutely right in that we're in fiber and whatever. I'm thinking ground, but yeah, I'm talking about power.
Yeah, no, you told me the other day and I forgot the answer, how that works. Let's say that there's undergrounding going on. Let's say it's a PUD line. You want it underground for other reasons because of work that's being done. And I forgot who pays what is PUD pay? I think I'm remembering your answer as I asked my question.
Mhm.
PUD will pay for some of it and then the city
Sometimes.
pays for some of it sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of depends on the project and whether
Yeah.
there's any like, whether they seem like they've been trying every time we talk to them about a project. They're like, well, we can fund this part because we know that we're gonna have, like, see some maintenance benefits with this. but
Well,
we would
the
need to
fact
find
that
funding.
there's already, if there's already a hole in the ground. then
Yeah.
it's alleviates part of the construction cost. So all the different utilities are happy to at least participate. Well, that's good.
when we start digging, when you do the digging, then they go, oh, maybe we should,
Yeah,
all kind of help out, yeah.
yes, you pay with the conduit and we'll put the line in it kind of
Right.
thing.
Can I ask a question that goes back a little bit? Of all these projects, which ones are underway that already has the funding figured out for it? In other words, what
Yeah.
is being done this year and you know where the funding is being come from? Because I'd like to put an X on those, so then I
Yeah.
think, and then my secondary question was gonna be, after that answer, what do you consider as the city's civil engineer? I just want your opinion on what you think the three top projects are. That if you could pick, that you think should be done. So that's a two-part question.
In what time frame?
Well, anytime, but what do you think is the biggest need that you think should be tackled first? And whether it's a big project that needs to be started and that kind of fits together with all the things we've been talking about. I mean.
Sure.
Okay,
So projects that have money, the funding already figured out would be the Cascade Avenue sewer, Cascade Avenue water. So those are the ones kind of at the top.
Cascade Avenue water line replacement,
Okay.
already got funding,
Yep, that's Public Works Board loan,
okay, and the sewer,
same, Public Works
Okay.
Board loan.
that's Cascade Avenue Sewer Phase 1, okay.
Yep,
okay,
and the water replacement. Those are them.
Okay, so these,
Is First Street on here?
It might be at the very, very end. We haven't been talking about it because,
It's done.
yeah,
Or it's-
ones that didn't float to the top would be like Holly and H
Yeah.
are on here.
on that, what's interesting, are those two different figures? I mean, if you look down the sewer Phase 1, 1,119,000, but then I come up with the east water line replacement, it's the same number.
Yeah,
So
we
that-
just split them in half.
Okay, so
Because we have
that,
a quote for the
okay, I
entire
get it,
thing.
that's why,
Mhm.
okay. But so that it's gonna be, okay, got it.
why the push for Holly Street?
Oh, just because we're in the area,
Huh?
because we're in the area. We have funding for Holly.
Okay, Holly.
Do we have funding for Holly right now?
Mhm.
Is it a grant or a loan?
It's TIB, so has like a 5%.
Yeah, 95% grant.
Yeah,
So is Holly then in works and paid for? I mean, you know where the money coming, is that an
95%.
X, if I'm using an extra road?
yeah.
What page is Holly on? I just wanted to mark all the ones that kind of are already,
Well, on the tip, it's on the first page.
Yeah, and I think it's on the top.
but on this, where would it
Mm,
be? That's okay, I can find it. I'll just mark it on the
it's
tip
kind
for
of
now.
towards the end.
You don't have to, I can
Mm.
figure that out if you want. I'll just mark it on here,
Yeah,
that's in the works, so that I'm not taking your time.
yeah, Holly and H&H, it's really like the way that I've been approaching like resurfacing. I think I talked a little bit about El Paso. At our last meeting, or did I talk to you about El Paso? Yeah, I think so. If we're in the area, we're having, our Squeeny County is the one doing the paving. And so they can do like a chip seal mat, which is like a really, it's about as light of a hard surface as you can go, as inexpensive as you can go, and there's no design money that needs to go to it. It's a really low budget way to reduce the number of gravel streets that are required to be maintained and work towards a common level of service for streets kind of in general for the community.
And because you're in the area anyway, working on these projects on this first stage Cascade Avenue, it's cheaper than if you went back, is that why you're doing, I mean, it's a
So Holly,
efficiencies there.
yeah, so Holly Street, we got TIB grant money to chip seal, Foster Creek, Ryan Allen, First Falls Road, so they're all kind of in that north west neighborhood.
Okay.
Those were the only ones in that northwest neighborhood that had a low enough pavement score to qualify for funds. And so Holly was actually one of them. I don't know. we said it was gravel, but TIV says it's paved, so they'll pay for it. So they'll pay for the, for the rehab on it, so.
So those are other
H&H
streets.
is the one that's not,
So-
that is gravel, so that would be funded by city funds.
By
So-
city funds.
Mhm. And I don't have, Clay, was gonna work on an updated figure. I had a meeting. Walked all the roads today with the county, so I should have better numbers, but.
So the ones that have funding are more than these two and Holly Street. You mentioned like you had a string of 3 streets you
Yeah,
mentioned. You
those-
also were, I
those
just
aren't
wanna
on
mark
here.
all the ones that are, oh, they're not on here.
No, it's
Okay.
like a chip seal maintenance project, so
okay.
we haven't been putting them on
Okay,
historically. We intend to moving forward, because it paints
Okay.
the entire picture of the facilities plan, so.
So on Holly Street.
Mhm.
How much are we putting out, the city?
So I don't know what the final number is gonna be on that, but if it's anything like El Paso. It would be 5% of 50,000, so. $2,500. Assuming that's the correct. Production numbers.
My only concern about Holly Street is
Oh.
it goes to the cemetery
oh, I know.
and
Yeah.
and it's used for parking.
We don't have a grader, so every time it gets. There's issues, we have to borrow it from the county, so it's partially the hassle factor.
Holly's not one that gets
So-
graded though, it's just
It
one
wouldn't have
that's
to get
like
graded.
horribly dilapidated, you can't grade it, cause it's
Alright.
like half
Yeah.
pavement, half
Okay.
gravel,
Okay.
half gravel, half moss. It's in bad shape, so. One thing that we can always do is look at vacating, like, I don't have heartburn with like vacating streets, but there are vacant lots that could be accessed via Holly at some point.
There was some. And the number that Dave was mentioning that, so that's, the city would pay 5%, did I hear it right? 5% of 50,000, let's say if that's a give or take number, so $2,500 the city would pay. But when you get that TIV money, is it earmarked for that, or are you taking away from something else that might be a higher?
No, it's
So-
just that one.
So then you'd think, well, for 2,500, you could get that. But then are there lots that accesses
There
in
are.
terms of vacating? So then you'd run into a problem later. Right?
Yeah.
So we wouldn't be able to vacate it without a boundary line adjustment happening or some other alternative access being provided to at least one of the lots, because we can't create an island.
Right. So that could be
So
a
maybe
tough.
that's not an option,
So.
Yeah. unless
And-
they want.
And there's a difference also, so if you look on Map Sifter, it looks like it's one tax lot. But there are platted lots that are on that street.
Can you vacate to a private road? Like if they wanted to assume it as a private road between lots? I don't know why they would, I wouldn't if I was the owner of a.
Well,
lot.
and then
No.
I also believe that the cemetery district would be against vacating that as well,
Yeah.
because they use it as access.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, I know,
And
and
it's
there's
very
some other things that probably would have higher priority up in that area that are totally unrelated to this. If you're gonna do vacating, I'm sure the neighbors would prefer some others to be vacated, but whatever.
Other vacations that require access to water, and it's a different process. and different requirements in the middle of that.
Oh, yeah, I'm not revisiting, I'm trying to bring that issue up.
I'm trying to pause and not talk all the time so that you guys.
I did have a
chance to kind
two-part-
of
that
look
was
and
it.
think.
And I'm
Oh, what
trying
were
not
the
to
top
monopolize, I'm trying not to monopolize with a two-part question, but if you're hunting for something to say because of the pause. The
Top three
second, the
projects.
top three.
Yeah. So top 3 projects, definitely figuring out our water situation, whether that's rehabbing the Rock Creek water intake. Or bringing Pegwell well up to snuff, like that's kind of a no-brainer, that needs to happen. As far as
Just,
the
when
next.
you rattle those off, could you give me the numbers so I can, oh, cause I wanna mark.
You're on the about the fifth one down on the CIP, first page.
Okay.
Yeah,
Hagelwald well.
3, 4, 5. Yeah, it just, we're, okay, so that's gonna be. I'm gonna put, I don't know, it's tough. So that's one of them.
Carolyn, have you identified funding resources for that well project?
no, I haven't. I got funds to do some of the study, but haven't yet. I feel
DOE
like that's
strictly
one-
waste, or does DOE do water as well?
I think Dewey does some water.
Um,
I thought it was gonna have
Department of
something.
Health.
Thought.
Yeah, I think Dewey still gives me some money.
Really?
Yeah. I think for emergency. I don't know. One of them dabbles in both. And I think it's ecology dabbles in both. I could be wrong. USDA, so Evergreen Rural Water District swung by earlier this week, and I guess USDA had some money available for repair projects, water sewer repair projects, that would have been damaged or broken or had some sort of issue with the 2021 storms. 2021, early 2022, I guess there was a storm event in there that has been declared like something to give money towards. And I was trying to get the Rock Creek intake in as part of that, and Gordy said no, that we started to lose capacity before that storm, so much for that. And then I tried to convince him that Rock Creek Bridge should be part of that, but he said not probably, that's not water sewer, so. Barked up both those trees. I couldn't find anything for that.
So the Hagelwald well is one of the, what was the second one?
Yeah, so there's on the very last page of the CIP, there's a project called Rock Creek Intake Rehabilitation. And it's essentially an either or, like we either go all in on our surface water sources or we go all in on groundwater source. And so it's an either or. Trying to figure out which.
I feel like given the, how little snowpack we had this year, the well might be better. I don't know how low the creek is gonna get, but
Yeah, it's,
it's usually higher than this at this point in the year.
yeah, it is a thing.
The Rock Creek intake, that would be, that's surface, and so,
Yeah,
but the well would,
yeah, it's an either or, one of the two projects.
okay, one of the Hagelwald well or that you would prioritize. I mean, you would, that decision would have to be made.
Right.
What about, I'm sorry, I just,
So,
like,
It's-
so the
it's-
$711,000, what does that pay for?
So, that number was from a technical memo that was completed.
2021?
21, yeah, 3 years ago. And it was, expand the well building and put in, treatment to reduce the pH, or I mean, bring the pH up on the water. Right now, the Hagelwald well water has a low pH, so if we use it for very long, there is a public health concern with, deteriorating pipes and,
So does the water not go to the water treatment plant then?
it doesn't, no.
Why doesn't it?
Why doesn't it? It just goes straight out into the distribution system.
So well water you don't typically have to treat, so because of,
But now we're talking about having to
So-
treat it.
to use it as a permanent source. Right now, we use
Right.
it as an emergency source.
Right.
And so it has different treatment requirements, and so we don't use it for the amount of time that causes the concerns that.
I understand that, I
continue.
understand that.
Right,
But what happens if we hook that, if we're gonna use it as a permanent source? Why don't we just hook it to our water treatment plant rather than put in all of this other?
that's part of the $711,000.
Does it hook to the water treatment plant as part of that?
So there's one, we would,
There's different options.
there are different options.
It's not a
There's-
It's not a big, it's like going from the well building. Have you been to the well building yet? It's like a third of the size of this
Okay.
room.
No, you
Just
say
go.
big size wise, I don't care what the size is.
Oh, okay,
I'm only concerned about $711,000.
yeah.
That's what I'm concerned
Compared
about.
to $1 million for the.
And
Oh, and-
if, you know, and
So. mhm.
we've already got the ability to address pH in the water treatment plant.
We don't have a pH problem with water treatment plant.
I know that,
Oh, okay,
I know that.
with surface water.
So what we do is if we in fact send that water to the water treatment plant, we address it there at the water treatment plant rather than setting up another water treatment plant up at the wellhead.
So it's
You
different.
see what I'm
tech-
saying?
It's different technology, so we don't treat surface water for pH,
But you'd have to if that were a priority.
because we don't need to.
So
Our
that would
surface water
still have, so
pH
there
is
are
fine.
things that would need to be added to the treatment plant in addition to it just being piped to it.
Low pH means it's acidic, so it eats away at metal.
Right.
But there is, I'm having confusion here because of,
It's
and I
fine.
think I know where. Your confusion might be the same as mine. Okay, let's back, how would you fix? So you're gonna fix the pH in order for it to be a more permanent source of water. Or more to be able to use it more. So how are you fixing the pH? I think that's where I'm getting confused. And
So-
then would Dave's way of doing it help?
So, right, and maybe I'm wrong, somebody who doesn't have the knowledge.
Yeah.
Like, we're all kind of like, I don't have Carolyn's knowledge, right? Right now, we're using it in an emergency basis,
Which-
basically, and the water that is coming in at the treatment center doesn't need to be treated for pH.
Which
So
is,
to
which is
hold-
not true, because I talked to Gordy and when I went through the deal up there were times where we addressed pH levels
But to do a permanent,
and to.
all the water coming in all the time would have to be treated. So to do that, it would have to do the additions for the well, if that's the main water source we're going to use. Because right now, that's not being done for the main, it's an emergency and it's not using enough of it to damage the pipe.
I understand.
And what do you, I don't, you're saying rather than,
Well, really, this is not like these numbers are not even like good numbers. So we're
Sure,
going
sure.
through this long-term water study so that we get good numbers on what that solution would look like. We don't need to come up
Okay,
with
okay.
a.
Right,
so
okay,
that's-
I get it.
solution
That's a
today.
problem that I have, is that if
Yeah.
these aren't good numbers. I want
Okay,
good.
so,
I
okay,
want
so,
good
so,
numbers.
so if you're wanting good numbers, so we've gotten these numbers from a variety of sources that are outlined specifically in each of the sheets as far as where we've gotten those
Right,
numbers.
right.
Some of those are from our 2017 water system plan, some of them are from tech memos that we've received, some of them are estimates based on current projects. If you want updated figures on all of these projects, it's gonna
Yeah.
cost a lot of
Okay.
money. And so what we're doing is we're providing our best estimate at where we're at. And then we can provide an escalation cost, but until we get to, 30, 60, 90% design, we're not gonna know how much each of these are gonna cost. And that costs a lot of money. So we're doing the best we can with what we have. Without having to go for a full-blown design of each of the projects that are listed here.
Cause the other thing we don't have is we also don't have like funding, so we don't know if $700,000 is something that'll be like 100% covered or 50% covered or 0%
Yeah.
covered. So, one thing that we can do in the future, like if it's the numbers, like I understand you see a number and you wanna believe that like that's the number. We could always move to like a $1 sign, $2 signs, or like a
Well-
range, if that would
What,
help it feel less certain.
I don't know if this was helpful, but the point of my question, I think, was to get a little bit over what Dave is saying. Is you're right, if you look at all these, there's a lot of projects and a lot of numbers in that. And that's why I was trying to think, the way my brain works, to simplify it for my brain so that I could digest it. Is okay, what is already in the pipeline that's funded? Okay,
Mhm.
well, that maybe I don't have to think about, because it's already going, it's already funded, you're working on it, the staff's working on it. Okay, I'm gonna take that off my brain.
Mhm.
Okay, because it's already done, right? So I've marked X's on there. Then, if you want council input, I think, well, I'm just curious what your top 3 projects are, just to help me as one person. So then I get your top 3 projects and you give your rationale, and then if is 1 out of 5 agree with that, then I concentrate on that and learning the numbers. And I leave the others aside because I'm just gonna clutter my brain. So then that's why let's say there was agreement on the council on the top 3 projects. Then we can, and let's say, if we got to that point, that's all we think about in terms of numbers, and then we concentrate, and then we learn more about those. And we figure that out, and that's, the reason I say that, Leona, is you made a very good point, we could do that for all the TIP. And I'm trying to say that wouldn't help me, I just need that for like, what we're gonna do this year or next year as we zero down, because you want input, well, I want it to be good input, not garbage in my brain, because there's so much to digest, and then I just throwing guesses out there. So that's why I was trying to simplify the process by saying, well, can we all agree, whatever those are?
Well, I
Does
think
that
that
help?
part of it for, coming up with the top three, because there's 4 plans.
Or
that-
4 or 5, whatever people
4
want.
plans that we're, the stewards of, so street, water, storm, and waste.
Mm-hmm.
Now, depending on the severity of the issue that's being addressed, then of those 4 plants, there's gonna be a few one that might spike to the top.
Mhm.
But like the water plant as an entity. We have a water plan that the council signed off on. What's it called? It was-
2017, and I think it's every 10 years I think it was actually finalized in 2018, but every 10 years you're required to redo the water plan.
So some of these projects are born from those plans, but then stuff happens, like the reservoir on Church Street, or by the church is ill, right? It's
Oh, yeah, they said
Needs some
3 to
love.
5,
But
painted 3
whether
to
that's
5
considered
years, so.
a
we're
major
thinking that.
project, like turning up the well is kind of a big deal. And then those unicorns where it's out of all of them, where you get, or at least more than one, like the project that Carolyn was just talking about. That storm and waste, and then probably water, once we get into it, so. I can see where Carolyn's like, oh, I don't know about this one, or what about that one, so keep that in mind as we kind of like try to mold it up into a semblance of to get close to this ranking system that you're trying to.
Yeah, and whether it's 3 or whether somebody says 4 or 5, I just, yeah.
Which I totally get, like, that was kind of what I did, is I went to the whole, that list they had, and they had all the dates, and I was like, okay, well, the ones that are way over here, cool, but let's look at the ones that are happening in the next year or 2 years.
You said that, that's
Yeah.
true, you said that a couple of
Yeah,
times,
and so
right.
that's where,
But then to Liana's point,
and then some stuff just jumps
of
up.
this swirling. Page of projects, okay, yes, the short term, the midterm, and the long term, and we have to continue to evaluate those so that they don't fall off the radar.
Sure.
Like the wastewater plant.
Right.
Which has been nothing but heartburn since the harsh reality set in. So Carolyn, let me see if I can
Realignment. Sorry.
see if we can get closer to addressing the confusion between the well and the water plant. So currently the water it's pulled in off the creek and goes into the water treatment building, where we address concerns that anything that might bacteria that might be in surface water. And then that's where the chlorine is injected, and then it goes out
Comes
Yeah.
out of Long Creek, not Rock Creek.
of the creek.
Both. We get water from both. Mhm.
Okay.
So that part's already in place. The well is not far from the water plant.
No.
But currently it comes out of the ground and goes right into the distribution.
It gets chlorinated, but
So it still comes through,
no, it has a separate chlorine barrel that
okay, but not nearly the
it doesn't get any sort of treatment for like turbidity, and that's a big one for surface water, so dirt in the water.
Hmm.
So
but there's nothing that would, in the current water treatment plant, that would address volumes of water to work on pH balance. That would have to be a component that would have to be added.
yeah, and my understanding is that the reason for the additional space and part of the challenge with using the groundwater source would be, what do you do with the byproduct? My understanding is that, well, there's a couple things. There's also manganese and iron that you may or may not want to treat for coming out of the well. There's secondary, secondary treatment levels, or spacing on the word, but there's like primary that says if you don't treat for this, you can't send your water out because it has known like health, but effects. You have secondary that's like, oh, this is gonna turn your white clothes brown, but it's not gonna kill you.
So
So
you're gonna have an orange stain on your porcelain and your
Yeah.
sink and that kind of stuff. yeah.
Exactly, and so the well also has some of those issues, so the byproduct of the treatment for that stuff is also a challenge. So, I mean, there's definitely challenges. The other thing is if you go to the well as a source, what do you have for your backup now? So there's a question about, would we need to drill another well, so we have a backup source? What happens if our source goes dry? That's not something I've really examined. Gordy has brought it up as like something to think about, and so just part of the conversation about what are we gonna do with our water system.
So is it either or well or surface? Can we just flip the AE on that?
There is a way to have them be combined. Yeah, there's a way to do that. It's another option.
There's a cost to everything.
Mm.
The cheapest way to do it is to have all groundwater and minimal treatment.
Staff
Time, I mean, we would. We could treat it without a plant, if we did go straight to the well. However, from my experience, at other agencies, it is good to have a diverse option of sources. So that you don't rely solely on one, but you have your surface waters that you can pull from, as well as your groundwater that you can pull from, because of the nature of climate change nowadays, is one of them. It is more expensive because, treating surface water requires a treatment plant. And it just,
Then there's this
more
question of
maintenance.
dependability, like
Right.
being held hostage by.
Well, and that's why if you have the surface water in the well and everything, it allows you the ability to navigate those challenging conditions.
But if we keep surface water as our plan B, then we're still on the hook to fix the end.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
stand up the system that's going to treat the well water,
Correct.
so we don't get it either or.
Well, and I don't know too, it also depends on how much crackdown Department of Ecology does on, surface water rights, and whether other agencies want to claim them, and use. I don't see that, Stevenson has that issue, but other agencies have had that in the past. And so it's also could be a potential use it or lose it scenario, depending on where it's at. So you need to continue to use it, or you may no longer have that as a source.
Okay, what are we expected to solve tonight on this conundrum? Just the presenting of facts?
Right, I mean, I think, so when Pat asks the question, well, what are your top three? It's really hard to just focus on three. And that's the problem that
And I
staff has
didn't-
had.
Yeah, and I
No,
didn't mean to get us sidetracked on something,
Yeah.
I just was saying.
Right, and that's, so that's what staff is asking for help with ultimately. Because what we see is this long list of projects and this long list of needs that need to be met. And so we go after funding, that.
For all of them,
For all of
whichever
them.
ones get funded. are the ones that we move
Right,
forward with.
and for grants, mostly, to move these projects forward. And then we're at a place to where we have so many projects, we don't have time to do much else, but it's also. We're trying to play catch up. And so. One thing that hasn't been addressed and we haven't put on a plan, and things that also keep getting kicked down the road, the public workshop relocation. You just took a bunch of real estate at the wastewater treatment plant that didn't have much to begin with. And made it a plant, which is where we stored our equipment. And so now it's somewhere else temporarily, but we need a permanent location for that shop. And the wastewater treatment plant is, there are multiple phases for that project, and will ultimately take over that entire site. And we will no longer have a public workshop at the treatment plant. And so we need to figure out where to put that. and how to store all of the equipment in a manner that maintains it for the life. And so that's, we have $80,000 here. We don't know, if that's what it'll cost. We don't know where it's gonna go. We don't know what it's gonna be. But that was something, again, that hasn't been on a plan. It needs to be a priority, but it's not as much of a priority as making sure you have clean drinking water or a reliable drinking water source. So
Get the
that's where it's
AC
like,
out of the
what,
road and
It's probably more of a priority than fixing all the AC water pipes. The shop relocation, that's probably
I-
higher on this.
The,
Yeah,
the 80, you mentioned 80, was that a different 80? I just happened to see on Ash Alley 80 here, but were you talking about the relocation?
about this
Okay,
one, yeah.
that's up here.
Mhm.
Okay, I see that's on there. I don't know if I'm correct or not, but I think that water, sewer, is basic infrastructure is typically a high priority item. I mean, that'd be right up there. So anyway, that's all.
if you don't have the tools, the equipment, or the people taken care of that take care of those things, then it's really hard to take care of those things. So that's where it's,
Yeah.
trying to balance it all.
We're running out of space to
Yeah.
put the tools we use to do
Right.
these
Right.
projects.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't saying that this wasn't related to that because
Right, he's saying
that's
that
why
it is.
it was separate. Yeah.
Right,
Mhm.
yeah,
Well,
that's why
and
it's
then-
on the list up there, because you have to have that, or you.
Yeah.
Right.
Where do we, the new vac truck we just bought, we can't park it on the curb and leave it on the curb.
but not what last meeting or the meeting before made the conscious decision to pursue not new, but newer equipment. So that we wouldn't be shackled with the ongoing maintenance fees, so that we were working on the machine more than the machine was actually
Right.
working.
Right.
So now we have newer, nice-ish stuff.
And then we need someone to put it, right, no, I get it, I get it.
The fire department has a property that's not being used. LOL.
Well,
Okay,
and then
that
there's
was-
also, but we'll see where those conversations go.
Part
But
just-
that's not, but that isn't fire department property, is it?
It's
of
city,
Sweden.
it's city of students and property, and they're, again,
Earmarked for.
it was purchased originally for the fire department, yes. Mhm.
When we talked about giving kind of a campus down there, something came up that we
Mhm.
provided with a hint of a roadblock. but
I think it was when,
City shops. and
emergency
fire.
management came out, pulled out,
Right,
we were talking about.
That we
something, anyway.
could potentially move the shops in, but then sort of. We have levers for zoning, but that was another. thing.
The harder part was, if you wanted it to look pretty,
Yeah.
not gonna happen when you have your stockpiles
Stuff.
of stuff there. So, yeah. I mean, you
Stuff
could probably do
with the project.
screening,
Right.
it'd be massive screening,
right,
what it would end up being. So,
So trying to keep an eye on the bigger picture for tonight and trying not to get too laser focused on solving a problem
Right.
tonight. So what is the ultimate goal for staff today?
if you had, so on these worksheets, similar to kind of how we did a couple years ago, although, I've been sick all week and most staff was out today because they were sick too, so, you get the low.
The low res
The
photos?
low, yeah, which is, basically all the projects and comments. So it's more along the lines of, so I think one thing that we were trying to talk about during the retreat, follow-up was, coming up with priorities or how to provide scoring for some of these, like, as I said, when you have projects that are so diverse, yet, one is funding and one doesn't. But one might be a greater need than the other. What do you go after it more because there's only so much bandwidth in city staff to manage all of these? I mean, I'm not even getting, there's paperwork, like crazy. So, what kind of a scoring system can we use to better, hone in on those projects to decide which ones
I,
to go after.
I had a little comments on prioritization, like. We're doing, development in the downtown on First Street. If it's successful, I mean, it's gonna bring more people there. And it's already, very high traffic, especially with all the big trucks and stuff, and. So I think it would be good, if that project goes forward, to also consider prioritizing. Street developments in that area that would improve safety and also the roundabouts. Like, I know that has to be with the state because it's 14, but, I think that would be great, because really the only way to direct a lot of the through traffic onto Second is to have roundabouts, because when you're going west, you don't want to turn left twice. But yeah, roundabouts, and then maybe even stops at First and Russell. Because I would also encourage people to go the other way if they're just driving through. Yeah, I think that all kind of goes together with the park projects.
So the First Street project that's in the pipe right now does have some traffic calming measures built into the bump outs on the sidewalk, just to try to pinch traffic, so that's an easy way to do that at the other end too, at the west end of town, and
Yeah,
the roundabouts is something that at some point we are gonna need them. The sooner we get them on the radar, the better, as opposed to just knocking on the door of the state going, hey, we had this great idea, we had it yesterday. It's been on the plan for a while, so then that is something that's gonna start to pick up some speed, but if that's a great thing to know as projects are being considered, is finding ways to.
I think one thing, I'm looking for as well is if there's any feedback on, the information that's given. Like, is there more information, less information, a specific type of information that you're looking for on projects that will, help you?
I commented last time, but I really like this.
We're always looking to improve, and so, we're also trying to figure out a way to, because some of this information is in a spreadsheet, and so we're trying to figure out easy ways to update it.
Do the Pac-Man.
Yeah. So the format overall might change, but hopefully, but the information, ultimately is.
Especially when there's a flurry of projects.
Right.
That this table is expected to weigh in and is supposed to relishes weighing in on. It's a lot easier to digest these more graphical.
Right.
And
The
one
format's
thing.
the same. And
Right, and we also have, what we didn't necessarily, we tried to put them in corridors, so. Carolyn was talking about Frank Johns, and so again, part of our dig once policy is to look at, again, people came to us and said, hey, we would like sidewalks. It's like, well, okay, it's not just a sidewalk project, though, it's like, what else needs to be done in that area? And it's the PRV, it's the undergrounding, sewer is fine in that lower section. But if you wanted to, go up, well, then the water line may need to be addressed, sewer would be extended again. So it's like you're trying to dig only once to maximize the construction.
Same thing with last year.
Save money.
Those opportunities are
Right.
gonna become.
Yeah.
Start popping up too.
Yeah.
I have a money question. I know that the sewer and water rate increases, the part of that was justified because of some of these projects, right? Okay, so as that money comes in, then, there's gonna be, comes in every month. Is that money set aside for projects that are on this list then? How
So
does that work?
It goes into the sewer fund, right?
Right,
It
but
goes- it
but
goes
to
into-
fund things on this list, right?
it goes
yeah.
into the combined fund. And I would need to check to see how they did this, the CIP. You can do it one of two ways. One is you can fund it all up front and say, I'm gonna pay for that $500,000 project all in cash. And so you would then have that in your reserves. The other way is, I'm gonna pay for that $500,000 project with a low interest loan, and so when they do the budget for the rates, they will budget out the payment that you will have on that project and not on that $500,000. And so by the time you make those payments, your rate is there and then you make that payment. That's what the two 10% increases for the wastewater project, that is to get us to the payments that we will need to be making when that starts coming due, because that will be almost $500,000 a year for the payment on the loan.
Okay, so. Okay, I just was trying to figure out, do those increases, if funds existing loan. How much of it funds projects on this list that haven't been done yet, I guess is the question.
So they went out to 2028 for that.
Okay, so I'm just saying, and maybe this isn't possible, if you look at these numbers. Let's say, I mean, the case has been made, it's hard to get exact numbers until you get into the design phase. But is there a way to then say, but in the reserve, we have X number of cold hard cash assigned to this project? Because it was one of the problems, one of the CIP projects that justified that rate increase. So is there a way to have a running tab on the spreadsheet of, we haven't done the project yet, but the money is building to fund it somehow?
The
We can
budget
figure it
is
out.
not set up like that right now.
Okay. So I'm just trying to figure out is, well, when you look at funding. Do you see what I'm getting at, is how much of that helps pay for these things? Just trying to wrap my brain around that, but does that make sense, what I'm trying to do?
It does. Right now, I'm trying to pay for the current cost overruns for the wastewater treatment project.
Okay,
And then I can
okay,
see where we're at.
okay.
So the overall process, we're compelled to have 2 public hearings, is that
Mhm.
correct? And then here's our workshop. What are we trying to get? Like,
So again,
I want to keep the meeting moving in.
right. No, so ultimately the TIP, both of these are used for funding. The TIP is also state mandated to have a 6-year transportation improvement program. And so we may cut it back to only focus on 6 years. In years past, we put projects on there that maybe were further out than 6 years, but we just stopped it at 6. So that might be a change that you'll see at the next meeting, is only see the 6-year projects on the TIP. And then the CIP will encompass all of the projects that we have, so that we kind of have an idea of, we're focusing on trying to be more realistic in what can be done and setting expectations for the community and for staff and for council on what we can go forward with. And so again, if you have timing concerns, if you have other concerns about the projects that are on here, that's what the comments are for. But
So is it fair to say that the capital improvement plan picks a direction and then we funnel in, because obviously there's a sprinkling of water, there's a sprinkling of storm, but because we're only looking at, seems like that the tip is integrated into the CIP. The CIP is the master document, and it's these other plans that feed into it and kind of overlay and piece together so that we can make efficient use of the money. So, where is the water plan, or is that, we don't revisit that as often?
water
as
plan
these,
will be
right?
10 years.
But it feels like if there's projects, unless this is it, the well is the thing that we're worried about now.
Well, the Cascade Avenue water line replacement is part of the water plan.
But
There's
Alright.
water plan things sprinkled all the way through here.
but not separated out, like,
No, and there's, at one point in time, I probably should have included in here, kind of the flow chart for the CIP, and the CIP is really, pulls from all of the other plans that we have. So, if you look at the org chart, CIP, or capital facilities plan, whatever acronym you want to give it, like the plan is the housing of everything, right, exactly. Whereas because you don't want to have all of these siloed projects to where you're doing a street project and then the next year you're doing a water project underneath.
exactly.
Yes, so this is our well-done plan,
Right, so we don't,
trying to
like,
put it all
right,
together.
but like, if you look at page 2, I mean, there's. The top 3 are all water projects.
Yeah, it's
It's
just weird.
it's just like, there isn't a
Yeah.
separate, there's a CIP, there's not like a water plan. Broken, like,
Well, we're
they're
not-
all in,
Even though we're not compelled
Right.
to visit the water plan on
On
as
a- right.
regularly as we do
Right.
these, it is still nice to have that kind of a, don't forget, in 6 years, we're gonna have this other thing come up.
Mhm.
And we still haven't even addressed the Catholic Church reservoir. That's gonna take some money, and that's kind of emergent, isn't it?
So what's
Like,
Oh, the
going on
paintings?
with that?
Carolyn we sent the diver down there and they didn't like what they found, right? It was,
Yeah, it was, they just said it's corroding. In 3 to 5 years, you should paint it
on
The inside.
I mean,
on the inside of it. Mhm.
but wasn't there didn't you bring some parts into one of the
I
meetings?
did, the report that they provided didn't say that they identified where they came from.
Uh,
So
Well, hopefully it started out in the tank as opposed to being thrown
Yeah.
into the tank.
it was a little bit odd. But
So don't be alarmed about the random rusty pieces.
that was what I took. What I took away from it was. We felt panicked about this, but we're not gonna document it, and it's like, well, if you're not gonna tell me to panic, I'm not gonna panic, so. You can be on the list in 26. There's
Will
Catholic Church
paint
painting.
fix it?
Yeah, it's a maintenance kind of.
So do they have to go in and sandblast the whole inside and
I don't-
resurface?
Yeah, I don't know if they sandblast it. There's 2 different ways. They can do it when it's full or they can do it when it's empty. I know, it's kind of weird.
right?
Yeah, but apparently they can apply some.
Well, I
kind
don't
of
want any of the
painting.
water out of that tank then.
No.
Yeah.
If it's full when you're painting it, how do
It's
they
kinda
do that?
I don't know. It's kind of strange. It's like resurfacing.
Sounds like black magic to me.
I know. Yeah, I was like, okay. I was like, I have to drain this, right? And they're like, well, you don't have to. It's more expensive if you leave it full, but we can resurface.
Well, okay, so just
I'm
like,
like, what?
so
it
it's,
doesn't make
I
sense
keep
to me.
keep circling back, but we've got roundabout plans on here. Because it's on the plan and it's something, yeah, it's not gonna happen in the next 3 to 6 years, but adding a reservoir to support any kind of expansion that we enjoy. That's gonna have to be on a radar of some kind, just like the roundabouts are. It's not anything that this table's gonna have to worry about. As far as the people that are sitting at this table, as
Exactly, right.
opposed to the entity that sits at the table, but.
Super high level, yeah.
I think,
But
that- yeah, I think
Reservoirs in general, like, we're gonna have to come up with a new one or add one at
in,
some point.
yeah, in general, just wanting to make sure that, that focus on the long-term vision is out there and all of that it entails. Is the goal of the CIP. Because again, we don't want to, get so lost in these other projects that street projects are a lot easier to have people be more on the ball about because it's more visible. Anything under the road is people aren't like, that water line looks terrible.
Yeah.
You have to.
Until they have to taste it.
Right, and so this is just to make sure that we don't forget of everything else. And by we, it's this, we're also using it as a communication tool with the public. And then ultimately, yeah, it feeds into the rates. And so when we do the next rate study, it's like, okay, well, what are your water plans? What are your sewer plans? One thing that also isn't on here that's been brought up in the past is creating a stormwater plan. And do we want to create a stormwater
Right.
utility? That is not addressed at all in this. So if that's something that you want to put in here, throw it on and we'll see where it fits and see where it lands, but that will take time, money, resources
Yeah.
to get accomplished.
Yeah.
And then create another plan, and more rates, again, if that's the direction you wanna go. And so that's,
This reminds me of when I was doing narcotics and. we
This should be
would-
good.
Shouldn't have been.
Dude.
We may need some of those narcotics.
Just saying.
And we would say, okay, here's our principal player. And who are his guys? And so you put them out here like this. And then you go, well, this guy's attached here, but he's also attached here, and he's also attached here. That's what we have. We have these projects, the end project. But then based on that end project, you've got undergrounding of PUD, you've got undergrounding of water and of sewer, maybe telephone or cable TV or, you know, whatever that might be. And then that, because that's down here, now that hooks over here. And I mean, where do you start? You know, I mean, that's the
It's like the
question that we
clouds just
have.
open and a
Right.
chorus of angels.
Right,
You
when
get
do
it.
one- When you
You
do one
get
project,
it.
suddenly had 4 other projects.
Yeah.
We need funding for all 5 projects to do them all at one time. What do we do?
So like
That's-
the, you know,
yeah.
this, the TIP, like Carolyn was saying, you know, these chip seal ones where it's easy, it's just like, it's a layup. But it's still on here. The water plan has things, well, okay, well, we have mismatched pumps at the water plant, so how they ended up in that way. But maybe we could move one to this other, or depending on how we grow, we could take the bigger one and put it over here. That's minutia. The things that we have to, that's part of just keeping the thing moving
That's right.
along, but we've got to keep our eye on, maybe not in the next 5 years, but don't forget, we've got to set up our successors with an opportunity to succeed as opposed to what this council and the last council compared.
Kind of walk into.
So like I say, it's really easy to get stuck looking down at the desk, whatever. You have to remember to just pick up your head every once in a while and go, yep, don't forget.
And you know, and I appreciate all the things that the staff does. But I would really be interested to know what the guys that are out there, the boots on the ground, think are the most important things that we need to deal with right now, because they're the ones that are gonna be out there at 2 o'clock in the morning with the backhoe and up to their knees in mud trying to fix a broken water pipe or trying to unplug a sewer line or something like that. And I don't know, maybe they've already relayed all that to you, but
I have that information.
Okay, well, that's
you know, those,
good.
I mean, that's valuable information because they're out there dealing with it on a daily basis.
Is that,
You-
I didn't think
No,
School Street got on
I
here.
was gonna say,
Yeah,
in my,
School Street.
from my understanding, that's how you get the dates for some of the stuff that's on here right now, right? If you're like, oh my gosh, we can't wait 5 years or whatever, that's why
Yeah,
it's on the list for
The
2027 or
water
whatever.
stuff is on
Yeah.
there because of that,
I mean, I know we've got AC lines, water lines.
yeah.
I know that, but that's not as critical as,
It's like to and need to.
yeah, exactly,
Needs versus wants.
right. And I guess that's where I'm at is, what are the immediate needs?
Yeah,
Okay, so now, back to my question, whether it's 3, 4, or 5, it relates to that.
Yeah,
Okay, when you said the Hegewald well and
rehab.
okay,
It's
and
either
that
or.
might be an either or, so we could say that was one, but in line with Dave's question, the boots on the
Shot.
ground. Okay,
Oh,
that, yeah, and that related, so that could be, okay, that's,
Mhm.
I'm gonna put a TP on that. And in answer to Dave's question, you said the boots on the ground and they're
School
communicating
Street.
with you because you guys have good communication. Would that be one of your top then based on that? If I put a TP on that, would that be fair, like top priority of the staff
School
or is that unfair?
Yeah, it's the, kind of the next one that makes sense.
so what are the ones that you have marked, Pat?
Okay, the last one, the School Street water line replacement, right, was what she mentioned in answer to your question. And I was just at, and it sounds like it's kind of in agreement with the boots on the ground. Am I right or no on that?
I mean, to me, like all the projects have different levels of urgency, and the only ones that are really urgent are probably the first two.
Yeah, okay,
The
okay,
other ones can kind of move around based on like
okay, so,
corridor and priority, right? But another thing to consider is, I mean, I would like to see more sewer extensions because I would like to see more revenue from that, but we've done a lot of sewer talk lately, so.
well, but we.
I wanna pull big jets on that. So that's another reason for me why the school street projects make sense.
But we did at one of the last meeting, make that a future topic, the 1.5% to look at, to drill down on that.
Mhm.
So that, like what you said you'd like to see happen, could be happening in the near future.
But again, Pat, it gets back to like versus need.
No, but,
And I want to
Okay.
address the needs first
okay,
and focus on those needs.
yeah, and
And
that
then,
like might have
because
been.
if you start talking about, for example, the school street project. Now you're not only adding it there in the water line replacement, but then you move on down there a little further. And you've got other things going on with school streets too. And you get up to Bulldog Drive up there. Oh, hell, now.
I was hoping that,
Now we're out here over here on this other one that says we're gonna change the way we go into Bulldog Drive. And so that all plays into that. So,
I was hoping the boots on the ground were kind of concentrating on needs and not wants, so maybe I asked the question. I mean, maybe we need to ask.
It's just one of those things where if you're mobilized and you have a trench open, you fix the other thing.
exactly,
Yeah.
but the problem is, it's an elephant in a
Oh,
closet.
yeah.
Because as soon as you open that up, you go, oh, well. Down there, we've got to do this. And over there, we got to do this. So since we're opened up down here, we might as well go ahead and push it on up there, and because we're in the area. And.
So I'll give,
You can't always do that, is what you're saying.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll give you another example. There's a water line that goes underneath the house. A main line.
Okay.
And we have been, gosh, this is 2021, I think is when the house went in. And they realized that it was under where they wanted to build. So they knew about it, when they were building. And they tore down a house that was existing and, expanded, but, so have in our plans to move that water line out to the road, and kind of make the corner, because right now it's just kind of cross countries. In doing that though, there's AC on both sides. There's some valving that needs to be fixed further down. And there's a place where there's no sewer.
And we need a PRV.
And we need a PRV. So again, it's this can of worms. Do you just focus on like doing that section? It hasn't broken yet. It's still, it's fine, it's functioning. Do we focus on the whole project and get it all done? And so that's where. That's what we run across all the time.
What do they call it?
Yes.
Doldrum or?
Yes.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Yep.
Confucius.
So,
Right, and that's why we were
It's-
talking about like corridors, kind of like.
Right.
This
Mhm.
Frank John, we could cut that in half and focus on this part right now. It's too big to do all at one time. You can't do
Well.
everything at once. But we can do a piece of it and get all of our stuff. The Dig Once policy is still in effect if we just do. Part of that.
and then do
section.
we do the project that, what known issue do we address
Yeah.
first?
No,
And sometimes, especially when it goes, for extensions, it's where do we think or know development will be more likely to occur once it's extended?
I mean, like that big logged off area they just did up there by the water treatment plant. Just saying. So
It's not-
Where does-
So they're not developing.
Right, yeah.
where does your staff? Where do they feel they need to take the public works? Building storage area workshop to? Have they suggested any areas that we need to take a look at?
They have suggested areas, part of this relocation. Is doing a needs assessment, so how much space do you need, what size building do you need? where does it need to be, what property do you have access to currently, what do any of those things fit, what property is available out there, so. It's a little bit of a bigger.
So like
bigger
that
question
needs
mark,
assessments would tell us if we have room in front of the water plant. For example,
Yeah,
in
it
that
could,
courtyard.
yeah, and there's a number of different ideas, I'm hoping to chat with, Mr. Bergenfeld about, purchasing a piece of that land potentially,
And that's exactly
Proper-
what I was thinking was,
yeah,
is expanding that area around our water treatment plant. Because they've already got, he's pulled the lumber off of it now.
right,
So now he's gonna have to do one of two things. He's either gonna have to develop it or replant it. And maybe now would be a good time to approach him and see what we might be able to do with that.
yeah, so I talked to Brian about that already. So next step is to put together a map, I have a call into Joe and I haven't heard back from him yet. So that is something that's being pursued. Other thoughts are Gropper Park, across from Base Reservoir, the fire hall. Place that's not being used is another idea.
How about the,
Hot three,
and I hate to say this, but, because of the railroad tracks, but how about the old Copice site and the office building site to the west of that?
That's still pretty coveted by the property owner.
Isn't it? He thinks he's got a. golden
Every time
egg
it
there.
comes up, they're like, ooh. What about all that? Yeah, so that would be a tough part. Plus, if that was to shake loose, would we want to put the public works building on it as opposed to?
Right. Right.
So for me, and I'm trying not to go down too deep these rabbit holes, but. A lot of it is resources. Do we want our gravel pile? Further out of the city, so we have to truck it back and forth, but that's property that we already have, and if we're worried about screening what it might look like. I'm pretty sure that at some point, that lot that we have down at the west end of town. There might be some movement that direction, and it's easy to make a fire hall an integral part of a neighborhood and make it look nice.
Yeah.
And be part of it, but public works, it's tough to make it integrate.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to look pretty.
So that's the other thing too, making sure where you locate it is there for growth. And if you look at where the city's urban growth boundaries are. I don't know if we have a map big enough, but it goes pretty far out.
Well, how about, does the museum? Need all of that area that they have?
They have plans. They have
They
a
do.
very motivated new director, and
Okay,
I was cornered one day. It's like, this is what I'm thinking about. So, making it more publicly accessible, turning it into something as opposed to just coveting it. So, no, that would be another.
I'm
tough
just-
spot.
trying to think outside the box.
So that 80,000
that would be part of that
relocation,
Study is like,
could
look at
get-
the city, what's available.
Yeah.
But first we gotta define the need.
Well, we always got Wind River Business Park.
Oh, Dave.
so it's,
Sorry, just throw a little humor into
Okay. The box doesn't have to be that big.
just one quick question, that
That's really
public,
outside.
Yeah.
I'm glad it was outside because I missed it anyway, so now you're telling me it's outside, I don't have to understand it, but, but this 80,000, then depending on what's done with, is where you put it, that could start getting expensive when you buy land or you're doing this or that.
Oh, yeah, that 80,000.
Because that's
That's
related to all
that's
what
the
you're talking
study.
about, where would you relocate it?
That's
So
the
that-
study, that's
yeah.
not the construction of
It's
the
just
building. or-
that 80,000 just
Yeah.
opens the top of the rabbit hole.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
okay, I get it, so
That
that
hopefully
could
gets us
be,
a
It's needed, but it's not, that's
so
not
this could
done.
be a want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, versus a need.
Oh,
It's gonna be-
But then, yeah, so,
but we can't
just-
put, I mean, I guess we could, like, this should probably, this job for relocation assessment or
Yeah.
needs assessment.
Well, you-
then underneath that.
you
is,
did
like,
put a
actual
TP, so,
Relocation, it's probably much more, million or
It depends on.
Okay, so to correct what I said, I would assume that when your top priorities probably are all needs and not wants.
Yeah.
Right, okay, back to what you said.
I think they're all needs, it's just. What cans can we get? Where do we get the most bang for our buck? I mean, that's kind of another thing that I think about. Where do we get the most bang for our buck? Who's gonna do it? Do we have to have it designed by an engineer, or can we just do it like? Something,
I think the hard part about the shop though is it needs to have HVAC
oh yeah,
to keep things warm and otherwise, I mean,
I'm just talking projects in
I
general.
know, yeah.
Mhm.
Can we do it?
But-
Can we do it? Can we do that?
You mentioned
Listen,
that everything is on here, you put everything on here, there's what should be done sooner. And then grant opportunities that come up that may, and there may be a grant opportunity that comes up for something that's farther down the road, so. The way I look at it, so okay, whether the staff or as a council, whatever is looking at something we're prioritizing, this is what we're doing next year for the next 2-3 years. And then if some grant opportunity comes up that isn't just on that, but oh wait, this covers this over here 5 years down the road, and it can't be used for anything we're working on now, so we'll grab that as we can, but we're not focused on that. We're just, our peripheral vision sees an opportunity, we'll grab it, but we're focused on these top 3, 4, 5. But, and what Scott said is true. I mean, you have to do both at the same time. Still, and then you're looking 10, 20 years down the road at the same time. So I guess what it is, yeah, we're all having to do short-term, several things at once, like 3-dimensional chess.
Mhm.
And that just comes with the territory. That's what we were doing, right? Yeah. But one
You may
area.
be playing 3-dimensional chess.
But I can't even,
I'm still having checkers.
I can't even play chess. But what it could be is when the dig once and do everything
Yeah,
policy they're
yeah.
talking about, that
That's
does,
exactly what you're doing.
could be that you take the city and you're prioritizing, okay, this is where we think the development is gonna be. So we're gonna concentrate on that. That could say, well, that's a top priority or however you word it, but that's what we're gonna concentrate on, that section of the city and do, when it's cost effective, do all the interrelated stuff. But it will be just that area of the city because that's all we can afford.
But I would say that we wouldn't say, this is where we think it's gonna happen. But if we have a developer come in and say, okay, this is what we wanna do, okay, now. That may change our focus on a lot of different projects because we want to get that undergrounding to that
Well,
spot and everything
If our
else.
magic ball said, or crystal ball said, go that direction.
Yeah,
And that's kind of what we're kind of working towards. But if a contractor came and said, if you're
Yeah.
gonna spend some money, might you consider going this way? It's like, well, yeah, we might consider that. Yeah, because
Let
then
me
you
think
do
about
get-
that
You do
minute.
get bang for your
Okay.
buck out of it.
yeah, yeah.
It wasn't it was mid to long, but why does it have to stay? No, that's the mid-range. No.
Yeah, exactly.
There is
Exactly.
shuffling that happens.
The
And it
downtown
has, and it
complex,
has since we,
Mhm.
even since we started.
Yeah.
There's been some shuffling of different things that have moved based on, either immediate need or funding sources or
Well,
what. have you.
even something as important as the lodge inviting staff up and say, okay, we've got some plans and this is what they are. So obviously they're gonna have to. They have their requirements as far as planning goes and getting their ducks in a row. But if there's money going in from one side in a particular end of town that wasn't even on the radar, well, why not?
Mhm.
Why wouldn't we want to at least take a look at doing something in that direction as
Right.
opposed to looking someplace because the crystal ball said to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you gotta be kind of fluid, but then the 2 to 3 year plans not, right? There's money in the pipe,
That's
there's
right.
Right.
machinations are going, and that is pretty strict.
Yeah.
Static, but
so,
being fluid after that,
I'd love to focus this on, is there anything that can be moved further down the list? I have a couple of projects to me appear like they might be more like nice to have projects. And so maybe we don't And they're not necessarily connected, or there's no necessarily an opportunity to pair it with another, with
Is,
another project.
Is Columbia Avenue realignment one of those by any chance?
That was one I was wanting to
I'd be happy. to-
understand
I thought-
what this council's priorities are for moving that one forward.
I mean,
It's
I-
somewhat, I think it's one that we've kind of debated internally about. Like, how do we move this? Is it something we should?
I,
How much effort should we put into moving this one forward?
I like it, but I don't know if it would be that much of a priority unless there's something other than the alignment that would make it more of a priority.
No, that's how it started, was the alignment, but the project, no, I can't even say that. It started as, there's a potential, what was the word, contamination?
Yeah,
So a couple of things,
Oh, yeah, the station.
in the part of the downtown plan. And I don't know, chicken or egg, but the downtown plan talked about corridors and creating multiple corridors and. Like Russell Avenue is a corridor to the river. Columbia Avenue is a corridor to the river because it provides those views as you're driving through town. And there's also talk of redevelopment on the west side of town too, but kind of like Seymour Avenue, kind of creating another kind of corridor down to the river. And because there's currently no development on that site, realigning it before there are any buildings is a lot easier than if you had buildings. And also the property that's next to it was a former gas station, and so there was an opportunity for funding to do assessments, and there is continued opportunity for funding for that project. Where we're at right now is, in order to get that funding, the city either needs to own the property or have a 99-year lease on that property. And
To get the
so,
money, to get
and also,
that's the contaminated site.
that's the to address the contamination that's on the site and also under the road. So when we move the road, we would need to address the contamination under the road. And moving the utilities, but so there was a cost estimate for that project and it didn't seem very much. I mean, I think when we were looking at it, we're like, you have to be kidding me. Because it was just like a couple $100,000.
Having too good a issue.
The other part of that though, and part of what was called a catalyst project as well, is because of the condition of the land underneath, it is challenging for people to want to buy property that has contaminants on it and then build on it. And so one way that government can help development is by owning the land and either giving it to them at zero cost or doing a lease as well for the land, and then a developer builds on the land to then stimulate the economic development of the area. That's another avenue that could be pursued, but again, it would require government ownership of that property. And with some of the funding sources that we're going for too, being streets, the property owner is interested in selling a portion of that parcel to the city. However, we can't directly negotiate because we can't, we don't want to violate any potential propriety to where, it seems like we're strong arming them to give us the property. And so we have to go through an independent third party to negotiate the property sale. We haven't even started that process yet. We've just gotten the action plan on what it would take to remediate the property. So, as far as that project goes, it is a site of accidents within the city as well.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why we want to realign it now before there are buildings there to further impede visibility as well as to straighten it out when it's easier.
Yeah, I had a minor issue there because of
The job.
the
The
alignment,
offset, yeah.
Yeah, so,
It's a good project. I'm just
yeah, so
curious
that,
where we
Traffic
want it.
study, I don't think,
that land could be cleaned up and used for housing. If that was combined with a housing, like we could, lease it to a nonprofit or something. For
Well,
housing.
and as Liana mentioned, in order for it to be a catalyst project, it's gonna, the the catalyst has got to come from the government side.
Yeah.
Because developers are gonna go, yeah, why am I doing that? So if the government can help, as in the city can help. Make that a catalyst, or be the catalyst. So that developers, that it's one less thing that they have to worry about, they can focus their money and their efforts on.
I
a good
didn't-
Project.
Yeah, I didn't see where the traffic study, the city's traffic study identified that as an area of concern. I read the traffic study, they did not talk about that as being any sort of issue. I would think, I'm not doubting what you say, but I would think if that, I just assumed that the realignment started to realign those streets and it would be in the traffic study, and it wasn't, that I saw unless I missed it. And so that told me that the professional traffic engineers weren't that concerned about it.
The project is already on the list by the time that traffic studies come around.
Well, they would have studied it though, and accident rates and stuff there. I mean, right?
Was that within the scope of the traffic study? That's
It
more.
wasn't.
I think it's more of
It
a
was a
transportation thing.
transportation.
So we don't know if there's,
So for tonight. What can we do to? What? To make the most efficient use of our time,
what, I think,
where are we with,
I like where Carolyn was going is there any we would take off the list, but whatever.
So you're talking Columbia realignment?
That was a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily off, but right
Down.
now,
Yeah.
it's on the same trajectory as like the Park Plaza
Right.
and our School Street.
SRTS.
Yeah, so last year's actually next year. So,
with all the swirling projects,
and that one does.
that
go
one
on.
feels like that one that could be pushed out.
And
I
I,
don't know, I'm,
myself,
guys-
I signed up for a brownfields boot camp to figure out how to.
No, but
Apply for
that,
federal
it is partially
Oh,
capped
oh,
right
start
now
that
with the
kicked off
street.
last week, so.
I mean,
So maybe not push it out.
Well,
No.
but again, if we don't own the property, we can't apply for the funding, but
Yeah.
what's the status with Kevin's money? Kevin got money to buy or
the
something?
county,
Yeah.
so that's a county question.
but you could make
Yeah.
arguments on why everything on this list
I don't know.
it could be a good thing, but we can't do everything. So we're talking about, what would we push out and not worry about right now? The reason I'd be in favor of pushing that one out isn't to say never, but it's just Liana is mentioned in the bandwidth of the staff. And so it just, I mean, when I was in business, sometimes if I just, you lose sleep over something and then finally you'd wake up and you think, what if I just didn't do this thing I was putting all this effort into it and just concentrate over here instead? And this attention and the relief would just, gosh, now I got a handle on it. Now I can start going forward because I had this albatross on me. So I think pushing something off and saying one of the things about pushing that off, the reason I'm in favor of it, I'm pushing off is it's already partially capped with a street because you uncap it. In other words, you gotta buy it, then you bought this polluted site you gotta deal with. Well, what if we just didn't have it on our radar for a few years? And didn't spend time on it and concentrated on,
If somebody builds something on it, then that's it, we're done.
well, then it's capped, you would argue. I mean, it's not.
None of them are gonna be easy to pull off.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so if somebody was interested in developing, it isn't something we could pull off quickly enough. To go
That's,
side with
it-
that.
this is a 5-year project, I
Uh-huh.
feel.
Yeah, well, then if somebody came along and was interested in purchasing that and developing a project, the only thing that then you could argue, that's great, you got a private developer that's gonna handle it. The only thing the city doesn't get out of it is if people thought that it was good to align those two streets.
And unless you can convince the developer that part of his development is realigning those
Yeah,
streets.
and sometimes though, and this is why I wish the
I could
traffic,
be convinced, I think.
the,
Could be your-
yeah, sometimes that's why I wish the traffic engineer had looked at that, or you might want to have that, because sometimes quirks and systems in traffic actually makes things safer, because it slows people down, they have to pay more attention. Sometimes you don't wanna fix every little crook, because it sometimes misalignments actually make something safer. When you straighten it out, it can be less safe. And those are things traffic engineers can look at. So that I really would, you know, I don't know if that would be the impetus for,
I think the loop road pedestrian improvements. I think that could be moved down. Because that's contingent on potential repair with loop road sewer extension and loop road storm.
Yeah, I think that is
I think that can be moved out.
27, whenever we're looking at.
Yeah, some of the, like I said, some of the dates aren't,
Yeah.
Yeah,
held in a different,
Thank
from
you.
a different location.
that's a good one. A good one to play with. Yeah, so I wonder how far down do we kick? Yeah. Might have a little bit of a 27.
And I think we need to kick down the Kanaka Creek Road at School Street and Bulldog Drive.
Carolyn had asked a question, Dave, and so, you know, she says, how far would you kick Columbia?
I would kick it, I would kick it down quite a ways. Only because you got a Creek water line replacement project, you got the church reservoir transmission lines up here. You got the Park Plaza in here that we're still talking about. The Leisure to School Street, SRTS.
Might be 29, 30.
29. And remember, we do review these every year. so-
Right, yeah,
so-
yeah.
So if this,
Maybe,
so if it was a mistake.
I was thinking maybe a couple of years. I don't think I'd go too far.
Mhm.
Well, 5 years would be 27, if you look at that, we could say that.
I mean, a
it's
couple of years
22.
farther than the current, whatever.
Yeah.
Like if the current currently aiming for finish around 26, then like 28, 29.
So, yeah, I was looking at the start date, so you push the start date out 3 years or something, or what? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, the start dates can be a little bit funny too. 'Cause it doesn't necessarily tell you how far along you are.
That start date has been like when we would start applying for funding or looking for funding.
This one's 22. Oh, yeah,
I think that was because it was on that,
22.
Yeah,
yeah, it started working on the.
We
like,
got a
the
grant.
Contamination and all that stuff, that was.
we got
22,
the
right?
integrated planning grant in
Right.
2022.
Right,
It'd be nice to not go boot camp right now.
I mean, that didn't sound up at all.
is there any other ones, Carolyn, that you think kind of are kind of a little bit standalone-ish, not tied to something that's fairly recent, that's fairly, that's coming up?
Now, if I take out
A lot of them are,
if I take out the preservation projects, I think it makes sense to break Frank John into north and south.
mhm.
I think that Foster Creek sewer extension gets pushed out 2030, more likely.
Mhm.
Addressing Maple Alameda, I would love to tackle that. I don't. Right now it's in 27, I think, which is fine, but that person should probably move. It might depend largely on whether someone, yeah.
The only thing I ask is that before we're done with this subject, can we just recap? Not that it's final, but what we've talked about pushing out, because we've got listed several here and I just don't wanna, I want my notes.
Mhm.
So allow 3 minutes for a recap. Because,
And once you get past that phase, we're starting to get into ones that are 29 and 30, you know what I mean? We're already out there a ways, so maybe we go with that list that we.
One
Unless you
that's
have
a little
something else
bit, that's somewhat standalone, and I feel like it's just worth bringing up is the Cascade Interceptor Phase 2. It's a sewer project. it's a little more expensive, there's an easement component with, broken phones.
Mm,
That one, we're gonna continue to work on the easement, but.
Mhm.
Entirely sure what that guy looks like for timing, even though he says 27 on
right.
But that was identified in the sewer plan.
him, right? Could be on the side, yeah. There's a reason for all of them.
Sure, no, yeah, none of this year, yeah.
And we've done the rest of it along Rock Creek. That was what we did
Two
2 years
years
ago.
ago, two,
The first phase of the collection system project.
right, I remember
Yeah.
going, because that was. Right after I started city council, because someone was asking me about when's it gonna get done? I said, you need to talk to Carolyn, because she's the one who knows.
What do I know?
So I was getting questions about, along Rock Creek when we. There was the overlay in having to redo and.
Let's see what's not on this list. There's no wastewater treatment plant on this list. Well, that's another point though, too, is there will be a phase 2. That's not on this list. So we need, there are other phases that need to be looked at and will also need to be upgraded with the treatment plant, so. Unfortunately, it's never done,
Right, right.
but. Yeah.
Well, we got blank checks on checkbook, don't we? That must be.
Plenty of
money.
money,
So if,
plenty of money.
Jack,
so if I have, for my initial, just for my notes, if I put P.O for push out, which that we talked about, and I know it's not casting some, but this is just for, in answer to your question, which one could be delay or not prioritize right now?
I can also, I've been,
You could just update
I
this,
could just
couldn't
update
you?
it and send it out.
Okay, yeah, okay, that way, yeah, I just,
Yeah.
That'd be the cleanest.
okay,
I agree.
okay. So they're gonna be the ones you mentioned? And,
I have no idea what they're gonna
well,
be.
that's what I was trying to drill down
I'm
because,
so confused now.
well, that's why I was trying to slow down because people were mentioning stuff and I'm trying to figure out, is that a consensus that we're doing that or what? That's why I was asking for the recap. Do you think you got a handle on what there was consensus
Carolyn
for?
takes a mean note.
Okay,
I
so,
had no fear.
I guess we'll find out.
so,
won't we?
so was there was consensus on those things?
I think we all, I don't think anybody was arguing
Okay,
against moving anything, like, we were all like, oh yeah, well, that would
Okay,
make sense.
okay,
or
good,
not. Oh, that
good.
makes sense. Nobody was like,
Okay,
Whoa, whoa,
that's all.
whoa, whoa, whoa.
I never heard Christie say anything, though.
Christie. Nothing,
Oh, I'm
No.
listening. I'm here.
right,
Okay.
I have concerns.
if she disagreed, she would let us. Hey, Christie, can you see us?
Yes, of course I can. Thank you.
Alright. Uh-huh,
Is that hers?
yeah,
You want me to drop that by your house on the way up?
No, I'm gonna pick it up. Thank you, though.
Okay.
alright. Is that what you guys were, is that the kind of direction we were looking for from tonight, Liana?
Mhm.
And Carolyn?
I agree
Obviously,
with
both of you, yes?
Yeah. I mean, it's a super complicated topic.
It
We
is.
go round and round and round.
And if you put it up on a wall. Oh my God.
So I have a CIP meeting for a half an hour scheduled every other week. It never goes a half hour.
My big goal is to actually get the projects in GIS so that you can see the different
Like
divisions
layer.
on top of
Oh,
each
That'd be
other.
awesome.
Like, that's my goal.
All you gotta do is have time to
Yeah,
learn it.
yeah, well, I have to have time to tell someone else to do it.
Well, I'm not volunteering.
No, no. And then, there's a lot of projects that aren't, with the park plan projects aren't here, the downtown plan, not all the downtown plan projects are here, shoreline access projects aren't here. Rock Creek Bridge isn't on here, a number of like the preservation projects aren't on here, but. I don't know, there's probably another way to another column for sorting to remove some of the, I don't know, ones that happen every year.
We'll figure it out and find it as we go down.
Yeah.
But I do like this, having this was helpful this time, so.
Is there any, like dollar amount? So like, for instance, the procurement policy, outlines expenditures and contracts we can enter into without like council approval. Are there any types of projects or dollar amounts on projects that would be helpful to not show for the mere clutter of it? Like the interior painting, like that. You.
I think that's what I was kind of alluding to that.
Yeah, are there
like
any
These
pro-
layups that
Yeah,
doesn't really
right.
qualify
Chip
as.
seal
part of
project
a-
every year.
Yeah,
Like,
That's a
you
more
can't-
of a
Those are-
maintenance
Those
project,
are more like budget line items than
Right.
CIP maybe.
right?
yeah, like I
Yeah.
said, it's minutia, it's the
Right.
machinations of day-to-day stuff, so it
Yeah.
feels like those could
Yeah,
not be on.
I kind of struggle with how much do you want or what do you want to stay in? So any kind of,
I think
but
when
that's just something you want to think about, like if you were able to provide feedback, because I mean, this will take much longer and different inspection projects. and-
So for example, like when you are sitting down with Leon and talking about the public works budget,
Mhm.
these are things, Leona, that I think we need to address next year for maintenance. Painting the inside of the tank, doing this, replacing this PCV valve or whatever the valves they are. You know, there's certain things that you get put into the budget. And then you don't have these issues. As far as coming up with a project per se, because it's not a project, it's just something that we know we're gonna have to do.
Operation.
And so it's into the budget. Once the budget's approved, it's approved and
Carry on.
carry on.
So that then, I like that a lot. How do we address those projects as part of the TIP? Because we need maintenance projects that live on the TIP, maybe,
Do they need to be in the STIP?
I don't know.
Why would they,
Right.
why would a
This isn't
maintenance
still for
project need to
federal
be on
What would
CI?
this meeting
The
be?
The
without
tip,
that?
are you talking about the tip, transportation improvement plan?
Yeah,
That-
the
is it-
STIP is the state
You
transportation.
know what happened about
Yeah,
that,
and
Vivian, my
so
brain
what-
right now?
The reason why state requires us to have it is because then it rolls up into the state one,
Yeah,
and then it rolls
You know
up.
what,
Yeah.
we're not very
My-
far off on that, actually.
I know that there's different schools of thought, but some people would argue that the tip should not be a wish list, but should be important projects that should be done. And I know in the past it's been used as kind of a wish list. Now, that's why I just as one person really liked your question, Carolyn, when you said, what should we not do? Because I always think that's as important as what you do. Not because it isn't important, but it's because you have finite time. And when you decide not to do something, that's as important of a decision as, for now, as to what you do. So that's why I was really happy with that question. And that's why, and all I'll say is that's why one time I made the argument that I like the fact that the staff would look over the tip and say, hey, I think we should skip that for a while. We should not even have that on the list. But Neil Goldschmidt, when he was mayor of Portland, had a thing, and he said, why he was so offended, he said he kept a short list and accomplished it. So somehow, I'm not saying we should,
Right.
I'm just saying somehow keeping things manageable, is helpful. And especially if you're not gonna do it anyway for 10 years, unless it's long-term planning, like Scott says. Don't put those little things even on the tip list. And we know of projects that have been on there that are just contentious in neighborhoods. Well, then you're inviting contention you don't even need because you're not even gonna do it anyway. So why even have it on the list? Just saves everybody a lot of.
So anyway, on your budget. Start thinking about those things that you're gonna do maintenance wise. And then within your budget for maintenance. Those things are listed out. And you have. Your figures associated with those.
So if they're, a higher, if it's more than 50%, because we've been kind of saying, oh, is it how much maintenance? Because they're not always just 100% maintenance or 100%, but if it's majority maintenance, you're thinking that that would
Like, what would
make
be
more sense.
majority mean? What would you do?
Well, really, like replacing a leaky water line. But at the same time, like if we increase the size, then it's.
Well,
50.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between, a broken water line
Mhm.
and replacing 300 feet of water line.
Okay. So,
When you're doing, if you're doing 300 feet of water line, that's one thing. If you've got a broken water line, that's another issue. That's a maintenance issue. That's something you should have in your budget.
yeah,
as an emergency.
right,
Which
and
you
so-
probably do. I would think.
And so, but that wouldn't include. Well, let's see, we're here, we're digging here. Let's go ahead and dig up the rest of the line and replace it all right now.
mhm,
Um. That,
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
I don't know if that
that.
just muddies the
Yeah.
water more, or
I'm also thinking of, if it's like reoccurring, if it's something that you do every year, that should be considered maintenance.
Or like
So the
chip
chip
seal
seal
It would
program,
be like a chip seal, especially since,
yeah,
we're talking about like you get funding for these 6 streets.
yeah,
Awesome. Those are, I mean, I
That's
consider that to be
report stuff for
maintenance,
me.
right? I
Yeah.
consider that to be more maintenance than
Yeah,
we need to,
I agree.
it just needs to get done and the funding's there. Yeah, do that maintenance.
That report, this is what we did.
Right. Yeah, no, it's like we'd like to know, absolutely, but it's not something like this. So
Mhm.
in my mind, that makes,
yeah. I find that the usefulness of that conversation is, understanding like, where do we plan to resurface? So I don't resurface someplace that we
Oh,
have
100%.
identified. Yeah,
You
so I
can
think
dig
that's
in.
kind of how they got pulled in, is that I was looking at chunks of the city. And then I said, okay, I got this plan, we're gonna do these chunks of the city, and we're gonna do them in this order, and it's gonna be great. And then these guys are like, wait a second, if you do that, you gotta do the stuff underneath first, and that's not, you're not planning to do
Right,
that for a couple of
right.
years from now, so
absolutely.
that's where they kind of. Like,
Yeah.
started to come in, but as for this discussion, it sounds like that's definitely that. You do not need to have that information, especially if it says comment. Okay.
Staff report.
Everything's important.
How we looking? How we feel?
I think we got a lot done.
We feeling it?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that was productive.
I do
That was
too.
good. I mean, hopefully you guys feel like that we got done what we needed to. But. And if you have more questions, obviously we're always here.
You guys ready?
Mhm.
I don't wanna rush it,
It's all in
but
the
I
wrist,
feel like
buddy.
we've coasted
It's
to
all in the
a,
wrist.
coasted to a very nice
We did.
stop.
We did.
Meeting adjourned, 7:58. Thank you all very much for
Thank you.
being here tonight.
Bye.
Bye.